Welcome to Fashion Your Seatbelt, your first-class seat to one-on-one conversations with the fashion industry's top voices. I'm Jessica Michaud, and I created this podcast to share the joy I have in getting to know all the amazing people who bring this creative, inventive, and extraordinary business to life. You'll get to hear the cadence of their voices, the sound of their laughter, and feel firsthand how passionate they are about what they do. Also, I just want to remind you to leave a review. Stars are really trending right now, and it helps other very stylish listeners like yourself find the show. Now buckle up, and let's get started. Kat Debeau is the director and chief curator of Antwerp's famed Mode Museum Fashion Museum, better known as MOMU, a museum that has spent the last 3 years under renovation. But now, after years of waiting, Kat is able to reintroduce the world to her second home. A museum with over 35,000 pieces of Belgian fashion in its archive, and a unique history that celebrates sartorial storytellers who have helped the world see fashion from new and unexpected angles. But while the MOMU is all about helping the larger world understand the different aspects and influences of the fashion universe, Kat herself hasn't been one to share her story much with the public. There is very little information about her online, other than the broad strokes that tell us that she studied literature and philosophy in school, that she first joined MOMU as a curator in 2001, and she spent a couple of years as editor-in-chief of A magazine. And then in 2009, she took up her top spot position as the director of the MOMU. So I was very excited to have an in-depth chat with Kat about what it takes to be a curator, especially one working in the rather new field of fashion curation. I look forward to learning about how her studies, her childhood, and her mentors throughout her career have shaped her worldview and her collaborative nature. And I was interested to hear all about the rebirth of MOMU and how she is planning to make this museum so much more than a shrine for clothing, but rather a living, breathing part of the Antwerp cultural community that interacts with the city that surrounds it and helps to nurture fashion lovers of the future. So, Kat, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. I'm really excited about all the new projects you've got going on over there in Antwerp.
You're welcome.
You're a great storyteller considering what you do at the MOMU as the curator. But what I really want to start with is the story of your first, visceral connection to fashion. Do you remember your first moment where you really connected to the idea of fashion in general?
Oh, if I go way back. If I go to my childhood, I grew up in a family of 4 children. My mother was a housewife, and she made most of our clothes. So I have very vivid memories of my mother at the kitchen table, cutting fabrics, laying out the pattern pieces, and I think that really left an impression on me. And because when I was a bit older, I was allowed to assist her with laying out the pattern pieces. And so I think she taught me the basics of how clothes are the construction of clothes, a sense for fabrics, a sense for style as well, the importance of the cut of a piece of clothing. And I think, she brought me the love for clothes and the love for craft, I think, as well.
I have to ask though, so you 4 kids and your mom made your clothes. Did she dress you all alike? Was it a Sound of Music situation going on?
Sometimes I have 2 brothers and 1 sister, and I have an older sister. And sometimes with my sister, yes. Mm-hmm. But then mostly we had different colors. We had the same dress with different colors. And I also remember we had a picture of me and my mom sort of twinning, wearing the same the same 70s dress.
Were you always in the same color? Was your sister always blues and you reds, or was it just? Did you?
Not always, but sometimes she matched my mother matched the outfits. Yes.
So I've always, growing up, I'm always fascinated, and I tell my kids this, that, there's so many careers out there in the world that you have no idea that exist. Mm-hmm. Grow up and you discover that. And I'm curious in relationship to the world of fashion. you had this connection with the visceral and the idea of fabrics and how different cuts lay differently, different fabrics in relationship to the fabrics, etc. But when did it kind of dawn on you that there was an impact of fashion could have on the individual and as on the society in general? Was there a moment where you, and then, an extension of that, when you realized that there was a whole area of career that you could have in that space? I mean, those are kind of two sides to the same question.
Well, I don't think there's a one specific moment. I think just walking around in any major city in the world, you immediately feel and see the impact of fashion. I think we live in a very visual world. We consume images every day, and the whole online evolution, the digital evolution of the past decades have just fastened that process of consuming images and impressions. So if you walk around in a city, you see a fashion image on every corner, on every street, and that has a huge impact on how we think about beauty, how we think about gender, how we think about race. So I think I quite quickly realized the power of fashion and the impact that fashion has. And that makes it also an interesting industry to study, to analyze, and to reflect on, because that's what we also do at the museum. We reflect on fashion as craft, fashion as heritage, but also fashion as an industry. It's an applied art. So you have these many different aspects that make it very interesting for a museum.
Well, I mean, that you kind of answered my next question, which was, you have a degree in literature and philosophy. So there's clearly, with the museum setting, philosophy comes into play. But when you were studying getting those degrees, was the idea to go into curation? Because it's such an interesting field. It's kind of a quirky little area. It's a small community of people. I'm just curious as to, was that the thinking when you moved into it, or did you discover this idea of curation later on?
Well, I discovered it later on, because I think you should not forget that fashion curation in itself is quite a young field of research. When I was studying, fashion curation was you could not study it anywhere. Now you can study it at the Courtauld, you can study it at the London College of Fashion. It was non-existent. So I really learned the curation on the job. I made a lot of mistakes, but I always say you learn from making mistakes. So it was non-existent. I think, my first love was with literature. I did also a specialization in theater studies. And I think there, I found sort of the connection in theater studies, in performance, in contemporary dance. The body is central, and the body is also central in fashion. Yeah. So I think I still can fall back on the sort of the academic framework I got during my time at university, and it's still useful today. And I always like to work with people that have different theoretical backgrounds. I feel as a curator, it's important that you're not just a fashion nerd or a fashion expert. I like that people can bring in different contexts, different frameworks, that they have a knowledge of film, of music, of art, of politics, even economics, because these are all fields that sort of touch fashion as well, and to make an interpretation or make an analysis that is broader than just what's the fabric, what's the embroidery, what's the technique, what's the craft, what's the fashion story. At MoMU, I think we like to bring a broader context that is not just limited to the object.
I'm curious then, in relationship to, it sounds like you've kind of talked about this already, the kind of mindset you have to be a curator. I mean, you learned on the job, you said it. What do you need? I guess you have to be curious. I guess that's the fundamental thing that you need to have as a curator.
Absolutely, curiosity. But I think that you also need that's a basic skill for a journalist as well, I think. Curiosity. I think as a curator, you should definitely not have a big ego. You work with a lot of creative minds who are often also egos, and you have to be able to sometimes you have to be a kind of a psychologist, and to be able to negotiate things with these creative minds. You also have to be very flexible. What I also say, you have to be at home you have to have a lot of interests, film, photography, music, art, economics, politics, sociology. But definitely, flexible, and I think be able to move around in different worlds. You have on the one hand side the world, the theoretical world, the academic world. On the other hand side, you have the fashion world, the creative world, and these are two different languages. And as a
Yeah.
curator, you always have to find a balance between these languages.
Mhm.
And when I started 20 years ago, I really felt there was a huge gap between these two worlds and also a lot of distrust. And I think I was so lucky to be able to start with Linda Lopa as a director. She was trained as a fashion designer, and I was trained as a curator I had an academic background, and so we somehow really matched very well, and I think we learned a lot from each other,
Mhm.
and managed to sort of bridge that gap.
Yeah, yeah, you complement each other.
Yeah.
I can absolutely relate. When I was working at Launchmetrics, which is a data analytics company that works in fashion, they needed somebody to translate the language of fashion to the tech people, and then
Yeah.
also explain what the tech people are trying to say
Yeah.
to the fashion people. So I absolutely get what you're talking about with those, being that kind of translator between the two worlds.
Yeah.
You did
Yeah.
mention, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry if I can. What also is important, I think, what Linda also learned me was to learn to see, to not only to sort of understand in a rational way, but also to see and to feel. I think emotion is also so important in fashion. And when we worked on our first exhibition, I remember it was really funny. We came together, we had a whole afternoon, and we were like doing a kind of brainstorm, and I brought texts and she brought images, and that just said it all. And I really had to learn to also sometimes, put the text beside me, and then to also learn to work in a visual way.
Mhm.
And I think good fashion curators are the ones that can merge both worlds.
You did mention earlier, mistakes along the way. There's been no schooling for this, when you started out. And as you said, and I agree with you, mistakes are where we are actually just learning experiences. What was a misstep, let's say, in your career that you really took note of and switched your perspective a little bit, or you said, okay, I'm gonna really change my direction, or I'm going to, I'm gonna note that for later. What is there? Because I think that those are really where we learn and grow as humans, and those kind of missteps, and those, we see where our point of view needs to shift.
That's a tricky question, huh? Just admitting professional mistakes. No, I think it's well, maybe also what I just explained about working with creatives. Sometimes you don't manage to have the match with the designer you work with, and every process is different.
Yeah.
And I always also tell my team we experiment is important, but experiment can be very scary too, because you experiment also means that you have to allow yourself to make mistakes, and that can be, also how to, curating fashion is not made for a museum.
Mm-hmm.
You exclude one of the most important things in fashion, that's the body. So you always work in a static context with mannequins, with busts, and there you can make mistakes. You can present it in a way that you think, oh no, this really doesn't look, this doesn't translate the energy and the dynamics
Mm-hmm.
of the that the designer created, and we didn't succeed in translating it in an interesting way to the museum. Yeah, that happens quite a lot, actually. Yeah, it's always finding new
It's very
ways
hard. Yeah,
to
it's very hard
curate.
to communicate it, especially if you're talking, because I come from a place of, I've been to Olivier Thyskin's shows since the beginning. I've experienced that firsthand. So I'm experiencing a presentation at the moment very differently than somebody who's never had that pleasure or that gift or that opportunity. So I absolutely get where you're coming from, to be able to recreate that atmosphere and the sense of the designer in that
Yeah.
way. So complicated. But I do want to kind of drill down into the what puts MOMU different or sets it apart from other institutions. I can't imagine what it was like to dig into the archives. I think you have over 30,000 pieces. Like, what is can you see that the selection is different for your museum, or the approach is different? Can you talk about really what does set it apart?
I think it's difficult, of course, to compare yourself to other museums. So I won't compare MOMU to other museums, but I think what makes us quite specific is that we really want to show that or translate that context, and not just focus on the object. I always say that the garment is just one of the end products of the creativity of a designer. And it's the challenge is to bring in the entire creative world of a designer, or to bring in the impact that fashion has on our society. It's something we're working on now with our opening exhibition Emotion, to really think, okay, we are working in this industry, and what impact does this industry have, and how do we translate it to an exhibition and to a museum. And in the past, we've worked a lot with quite extensive exhibition designs to just generate that context. We've also experimented a lot about what I explained earlier, how to replace that body.
Yep.
Because I feel it often frustrates me, how to, and just to give you an example, when we were working on the Margiela Hermes exhibition, so an exhibition focusing on Martin's time as creative director for the Hermes women's wear, we really wanted to bring the story that he designed collections for women of all ages, women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, even 60s, 70s. You can explain that in a wall text, but that doesn't communicate it. If I read that in a wall text, you read it, you say, yeah, whatever. But you have to see it and feel it. So how to do that? You can, show some catwalk images and say, well, he casted like different models with at that time did a lot of street casting. And then we decided we asked Hermes if we could use their archive to make films, which of course is not possible with museum objects, but with the Hermes archives, they allowed us to do that, as it was also under the supervision of Martin himself. And we invited former models of Martin for Hermes. We're now, of course, 10 to 15 years older. And we made these very poetic films of these women. I think the youngest was end 30s and oldest was early 70s. And I think through these films, you really felt, okay, this fashion is really working on women of different ages.
Well, I can totally confirm, because I was at those shows and loved those presentations and saved my pennies and bought a piece from those collections. I bought a scarf over the shoulders with the pockets. That was all I could afford.
Yeah.
That was. I was like, I have to have a piece. Like, same thing for the Dries Van Noten show where the models walk down the middle of the from that. Like, there are like key moments in my fashion history. But I absolutely can, and it's so great that you were able to bring that to life, because it was so, I don't know, it was such a quiet revolution the way that he did that at Hermes and doing it in stores.
Yeah. No, maybe other example from an older exhibition we did when we did a solo exhibition with Yoji Yamamoto. He insisted that people could try on the garments, which he said, this is really impossible. This is not allowed in the museum. And then again, he said, yeah, you can work with my archive. And then we had a separate section in the exhibition. The exhibition was also entitled The Dream Shop. So it was a sort of shop we recreated, fitting cabins with some staff assisting you to try on some garments and explain you also the garments. And the interesting thing was that you can again explain the notion or the concept of an oversized garment. Yamamoto often works with oversized garment, this concept of the air between the garment and the body, and how that also is an important element in his design philosophy. But you can only understand that when you wear it, when you really feel, okay, women of with different sizes wear these in different ways, and how genius that concept is. And that was super fun to do. That was also the only time that people could try on garments in the museum.
Well, I
That
mean,
definitely was an experiment.
that actually makes me think about the times we're living in now, because the idea of a bunch of different people trying on the same garments in a, in a shop, let alone a museum, it seems completely impossible in the current climate of COVID. And I know that the museum has, been going through renovations, and there's the big launch on September 4th with all of the new exhibitions and things you're going to be doing. But I did want to, and I want to talk about that, but I do want to talk about what this last year and a half has been for you in relationship to how you've been looking at maybe the digital aspect of the museum. I work with a friend who her sole focus at Google is to help museums digitalize all of their content and make it available online. But I'm curious as to what this last year and a half has made you think in relationship to the work that you do, and how you can tell that story in a way where people are able to experience it and come and visit the museum, whether it's closed for renovation or closed because of a global pandemic.
Yeah, of course, the digital is super important, and the pandemic made it clear even more. But we already for years we're working on a digital strategy, and how and we are thinking about how to make our how to translate our content to the digital in ways that are relevant. And I think that's really important. I think the comment I heard most from friends or people during the pandemic about museums, very hastily digitizing their content, that it was super boring. That museums decided to film an exhibition and put the film online. It should be relevant, and it should be exciting, it should be interesting, and that means you have to think about different ways. The recipes that work for a physical exhibition don't work for an online exhibition. And I think you saw the same struggle with designers who overnight had to do their presentations digitally. Some of them were really interesting or even moving, because that was my biggest question: how to translate the emotion of a good fashion show, where someone is doing something live for you as an audience. It's just 15 minutes, but when all the elements are good, it can be like a magical moment, very emotional. Is that possible in a digital way? And with some designers, I really thought it was very irrelevant and very boring, and with others it was like you had to feel like, okay, yes, this really works. And I think that designers will in the future look also for a hybrid way of working, to combine a physical presentation with a digital presentation, because it allows you to do storytelling in a very different way. And at the museum, for example, for quite a long time, we had the database of our collection online. But we soon realized, like, who is browsing a database just for fun? Professionals. But this is like a very small group it's a niche, a small group of people. But you don't browse a database for fun. So we are now working on sort of also curating our collection online, and we will bring it out this autumn. So it will be curated stories on specific parts of our collection, with good images, with good video, with interesting stories. Because of course a database contains like very dry information, the technique, the often information that's not always most relevant or interesting for your audience. So and I think it's very exciting, because there are so many ways to curate fashion, both online and in your museum. And we should not be lazy as museums. I think we should come up with new ways in order to stay relevant for future audiences, because that's really my biggest fear, that as a museum you're no longer relevant in 10-20 years, because your audience is no longer interested in you. It's a big challenge to get in younger audiences, and you really have to keep on working on the connection with the digital born generation.
Digital natives, yeah, absolutely. Well, tell me about that then. So September 4th, the big reveal, you're going to have a whole bunch of exhibitions, the MoMU's back. Tell me a little bit about what you've got in store, what we can look forward to, what's going to be happening.
Well, we have our opening weekend, September 4th and 5th. We do a lot of workshops, guided tours. There will be music. So we hope it can be like a big feast. Of course, we have to wait a little bit how Corona will evolve, and what the what we are allowed to do and what not. We will present 3 different exhibitions. First, on ground floor is a collection presentation, and that's an entirely new space. It's the first time we have an exhibition space for our collection. It will have a focus on Belgian fashion. But also we will present pieces from our historic collection. But of course, we are known for our contemporary Belgian fashion. So that will have the main focus. Then we will have a second exhibition on the first floor called Emotion. It's a wordplay on emotion and motion. Because I thought it was really important to reopen a fashion museum and then also to reflect on the state of fashion today. And the exhibition focuses on the big transformative moments of the past 3 decades, beginning of the 90s up to now, and how fashion designers and artists have responded to these transformative moments. That can be a crisis like 9/11, that can be health crises like HIV, but also the current pandemic. And how that can also be the internet revolution, the digital revolution, and how designers have responded. We've also during the pandemic we've interviewed many designers, both active and non-active designers, and a lot of fashion students. We have interviewed fashion students from 8 different fashion schools, and we are reworking those interviews into a performance that will also be part of the exhibition. So that's a way of experimenting. It's a bit scary, but we want to. I really felt the need to have a live aspect in the exhibition, and to see how to really generate a very emotional moment in the exhibition, and we will see how it works out.
The envelope. That's good. That's good.
Yeah. And then the third exhibition is called Places, Looking Through Antwerp Lace, and it will open end of September. It's an exhibition both at Momu, but also at 4 different venues in the city, mainly historic houses. We have some of the most beautiful historic houses in Antwerp, but these are all venues that have a historical link to either lace production or lace trade. We focus on the beginnings of lace, the 16th century, when Antwerp played a very important role in the production and international trade of lace. And so the locations are the Plantin Moretus Museum, which we all know. It was a world famous printing family, but few people know that Christophe Plantin had 2 daughters who started their own lace business at a very young age. They were 12 years old. They did their own bookkeeping, their own accountancy, and it was a very lucrative business. So one of the storylines in this exhibition is also the role that women and girls played, which was often quite an active role. So it was not only passive and making the lace, but also having active roles within the trade of lace. Then we have the Charles Borromeo Church, which is the most beautiful Baroque church in Antwerp. We have the Snijders Rocox House and the Maiden's House, which is a former orphanage where the girls were taught how to make lace, and also helped in the production of specific commissions.
I love that you're taking the museum and you're pushing it out into the world a little bit and giving it context within the space of the city itself. Mm-hmm. That's brilliant, and again, unexpected.
And maybe I also have to add that it's not only the history of lace and Antwerp, but we also do interventions with contemporary fashion, and it's a selection of contemporary designers that refer to lace both in concept or form.
Wow. All right. Well, you mentioned the role of women in the industry and lace specifically, but as a woman in a leadership position, I'm wondering, what are some big life lessons or advice you would give for future female leaders? What would you say that is a key thing to know or to do?
That's a very nice question, I think, because it's. I think we still have a lot of work to do as women. I see still too few women in leadership positions. And what I've often noticed the past years is that a lot of women are very hesitant to take up management positions. I think one of the reasons is that women often think that they have to be perfect from the first day. So
Mm.
my advice is allow yourself a learning curve,
Mhm.
allow yourself a learning path. Nobody is a perfect manager or a perfect leader the first day.
Mhm.
And I have already convinced some women to take up positions, and I often think it's a pity. Like, we have to believe in ourselves, and we have to allow ourselves to make mistakes, and also to learn and to grow.
Give ourselves permission to make those mistakes, those
Yeah,
lessons.
yeah, yeah. And it's also, if I look back at my own career, I was very insecure when I first became director. I had been curator, I think, for 6 or 7 years, so I was not so much afraid of the creative direction, but I was very much afraid about the financial management of the museum. I had some experience, but I didn't have, and I remember that I told my boss, like, yeah, I didn't study management, I didn't study economics, and he replied, I did neither, and I also, cope, and I learned, and so it's very important to have people around you that advise you, invest in a network, people that coach you, that help you, people you trust,
Mm-hmm.
even if at times, if you're scared or insecure, that you have a network to fall back on.
Absolutely. Surround yourself with other powerful women and
Yeah.
men who are, yeah, I'm always surround yourself with great minds. I absolutely agree. And suggest that
Yeah.
to my daughters. Absolutely. All
Mhm.
right. So time for the 5 generic fashion questions that I
Okay.
ask everybody. Here we go. And this one I'm very curious about. What is your favorite piece of clothing that you own that you cherish above all others?
Also difficult question, because I cherish a lot of the clothes in my wardrobe. I can very I don't throw things away. I keep everything,
Either.
even if it doesn't fit anymore. But there's this one jacket of Anne de Meulemeester, which I bought, I think, 15 years ago. It's a leather jacket in this very, very soft leather, and it just gets more beautiful. The more I wear it, the more beautiful it gets. I've worn it with an evening dress. I have worn it with jeans. I've worn it, informal, formal, and yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite pieces. And it has a great cut, especially what I always love with Anne de Meulemeester are the shoulders.
Yeah.
The cut of the shoulders is so beautiful,
Mhm.
and it fits like a glove. Yeah,
That sounds like
that's my
heaven.
favorite
Yeah.
piece.
Those people like, again, the jacket. Yes, again, this jacket. I absolutely can relate. So you talked about this piece that you've worn for 15 years, and I have a number of pieces again that, I have a Yoji Yamamoto, denim patchwork skirt that lives on my wall because I've never been able to wear it, but that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But what would you recommend for people who don't have a budget, what is that piece that they should save up for, the one that they should really invest in, and above all else? Is there a particular piece that will last, the test of time, would you say?
Well, again, a difficult question. No, I think that there's not one piece. My advice is just invest in quality, because that jacket of Anne de Meulemeester was a very expensive one, but I still wear it after 15 years. It's I've worn it on so many occasions that it's worth the budget. And I really, at that time, I also had to save up for it, invest in quality, and yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You don't want to ever, it sounds like an easy, buy it at H&M and your whatever, fast
Mm.
fashion. And then, you wear it 3 times and it falls apart. But
Yeah,
when you wear the
yeah,
same, I have an Hermes piece that I bought 25 years ago, and my husband just about killed me at the time. But, now
yeah.
when you look at it, I still wear it. This is going to be a hard one for you. Another hard question. Who is your favorite designer, living or dead? Which is the one who's your soul?
That's for me that's impossible to answer. I cannot answer that question because I mean, especially in Antwerp in Belgium, we are so spoiled with so many talented designers,
Mhm.
and I love so many of them. Even if I don't wear all of their collections, it's not always my personal taste, but I can, from a professional point of view, there are so many designers that I absolutely adore and love. So I'm not going to give you one name.
I know, I figured as much, but I had to ask the question. What trend will you never follow?
There's also one question I cannot answer because I always want to be very open. Never say never. um, and yeah, and of course, as a woman, you feel that if you grow older, you're not allowed to wear certain things anymore, and you have to cover up certain parts of your body.
Mhm.
But I think you feel different in every stage of your life, and I don't know how will feel about my body when I'm 60 or 70.
Mhm.
So I don't know what I will wear then, and it's very hard to you cannot predict the future in fashion. You don't know which items or which designs will return, and that's also, I think, the exciting thing about fashion. It's always a surprise, and sometimes you think, oh my god, no, not that trend, or not that garment, or not that color, or but I always like to be quite open-minded. Even I also have two daughters, and they already now are doing their own thing, and I'm like, okay, I have to let it go. I once tried with the argument, you cannot wear that, and I know because I am the director of a fashion museum. And my husband said, are you really saying that to your children? They're like, okay, no, I have to let go.
Mhm.
That's and it's also nice to see how they see their bodies, and what they think is beautiful, and how they experiment with garments. And I think I have to give them that freedom.
You are preaching to the choir. I have the exact same experience with
Yeah.
my daughter. The things, I'm just like, I would never, but I look back at the photos of myself in the 80s and go,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
man, I
yeah.
thought I was so fabulous. Anyway, yeah, that just takes me back. Last question, and you kind of answered this already, but what do you love most about fashion?
I think always the surprise element. You cannot the fact that it's unpredictable, that it changes so fast. It changes too fast. I think, but I like that. I like the surprise element and the dynamics of fashion. But it's double. It's because I think it's going too fast, and we all know that we have to slow down the rhythm.
Mhm.
That the rhythm today is not sustainable. But I love the fun aspect, the creativity, the emotion. Sometimes I feel we lose that a little bit in fashion, so we have to work on that, I think, to just keep the emotion in fashion alive.
Yeah, especially when there's so much content, so
Yeah,
much things to see, then you lose, it's almost spoiled for choice makes it impossible to actually appreciate anything.
yeah, yeah.
It has been such delight speaking with you, and I have to say I'm just crushed that we haven't done this sooner because it's just been so
Yeah.
really, really
No,
wonderful.
it was fun, Jessica. It
Really.
was a pleasure to do this.
Listen, good luck, as they say in French, merde. Good luck for the exhibition and the
Thank
opening.
you.
Everything works out great. Thank you so much for speaking with me.
Yeah, thank you. And hope to see you in Antwerp soon.
Yeah, me too, me too. Fingers crossed. All right, bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Don't want to miss an episode of Fashion Your Seatbelt? No problem. Just go to iTunes or wherever you download your podcasts and click on the subscribe button. Then every new episode will drop into your feed automatically. No fuss, no muss. Believe me, I know. I'm Jessica Michaud.